Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Movie Battleground. This is where we take two competitors, we put them in the ring, we have them duke it out. This isn't movie trivia. No. It's something different. It's something even bigger and faster and stronger, and it's called movie debating, depending on what the question is. That's what we have for you tonight. We got two competitors. They're going to make their entrance into the ring in just a moment. But first, I want to introduce the other judges we have on this panel, because I am not alone on this. Joining us here, also on the judges panel tonight, we have Mr. Joe Harrison. Joe, how are you doing tonight, my man?
I'm doing well. I'm excited. These are two great competitors, so excited to see them duke it out in the ring.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. And also, he is our MVP of the night, the third judge, because you can't have a full judges panel without three, and he is the one, the only, Mr. Richard Schwartz. Richard, how are you doing tonight, my man?
Doing good. Excited to see these two fight it out.
Absolutely. It is going to be another great match with two awesome competitors. Now, gentlemen, we're going to get into this match, but first, I want to let you in on how this match is going to go. We have three main round questions. They were all given to the competitors ahead of time. They put together their answers. So you will have 90 seconds, or up to 90 seconds, to make your opening statement, and then it will go into 5 minutes of straight-up debate between the two competitors, and then they will have up to 60 seconds to make their closing arguments. Judges, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
I was going to say, all right. Fantastic.
Yes.
Just making sure. And everybody watching at home, I know you're ready, so we're going to get right into it. All right, gentlemen, first question is the following, and it goes a little something like this. With Toy Story 4 in theaters, which Pixar film should get a sequel? And the caveat is, if it had a prequel, it can also be used. So with James, you're the higher-ranked competitor. You will be going first. Time will begin when you start talking, and you have up to 90 seconds to make your opening argument.
Look, Pixar has a long track record of producing fantastic movies, but they also have a track record of producing somewhat lackluster sequels. What I'm proposing is that you take a fantastic movie that can just bridge the gap and actually make a fantastic sequel, because all the pieces are there for it, and that's the film Inside Out. Inside Out is one of Pixar's greatest films they've ever made. The amount of care that went into telling the story of Riley, an 11-year-old girl dealing with these different emotions, is ripe for a sequel. Seeing her transition not only from, this adolescent child to a teenager, and seeing what would happen, to her brain and the chemistry and all these different things. Riley is going to be going through so many things. I mean, you know that a teenager's, their demeanor, their moods, their personalities, their emotions, they can just flip on a dime. So it's perfectly ripe to have a sequel. And with Pete Docter returning, who had so much of his own self in that movie, looking at his children, and what he built on that, I believe that it could be just a seamless transition into what a Pixar movie is meant to be. Something with heart, something that just grabs you at your heartstrings and tugs, but also has a lot of fun and a lot of air to it. That's going to be the basis for what Inside Out 2 can be. It's going to have a lot of heart, but it's also going to be something that's going to be hilarious, just the way that they do and what they did in the first one.
And time is up. That is time. Thank you so much. All righty. So we got that, and we are going to go over to the real or deal. Ryan O'Regan, you will have up to 90 seconds to make your opening statement, and time begins whenever you start talking.
Not to necessarily echo James's point, but yes, Pixar has had a long stretch of hit after hit after hit after hit after hit, especially when it comes to their original ideas, not even so much prequels or sequels. That's why, in my mind, something that is ripe for more storytelling that has been out of the talk for quite some time is WALL-E. I mean, as we've seen, Pixar really doesn't do anything with most movies until they've reached a certain age. We've seen it with Finding Dory. We've seen it with Incredibles 2. WALL-E is 10 years old, and it now has a point in its storyline where you can see if things go on in a further, far off, years down the line sort of narrative. We've seen how things ended, and I'd love to see how things continue on with humanity, with the robots, with the evolution of both species in a sense. There's so much more story that can be told. There's so much more lessons that can be learned from just these little robots that can barely say a word. And it's endearing. It's fully marketable as far as Disney is concerned, whether it be for young kids, toys, whatever. And really, it's one of those movies that just kind of like touches me personally. And nothing against Inside Out, but for me, WALL-E just seems like it has much more to say. And that's my time.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Both competitors have made their opening statements. Now, gentlemen, you will have up to 5 minutes to duke it out in a straight-up debate. And I will also, when there's 1 minute left in the time, I will give you a 1 minute warning on that. So time begins whenever someone starts talking for up to 5 minutes of straight-up debate. So let's find out who's going to win this round.
Look, WALL-E did have a story to tell, and it told that story. WALL-E is social commentary about how humanity is destroying the planet and how humanity is destroying themselves. It told that story. And you know what? We are still destroying the planet. We are still destroying ourselves. WALL-E has no place to go because the commentary hasn't shifted yet. We are still in that place. Now, you could be optimistic and saying, oh, yeah, these people came back to Earth and they fixed everything. But we know that that's a bunch of bullshit because we are living in just the hellscape that was the first WALL-E right now. And what made WALL-E so great wasn't the ending when you have all these people on the spaceship. The beginning of WALL-E is what was fantastic. It's all that lead up. The first 75, 80% of that movie, it's artistic, it's beautiful. But once you got to the spaceship and you saw all these fat people flying around on their little hover chairs and you kind of got the social commentary part of it involved, then that's where it lost hope. And if you go to a sequel, all you're going to be getting is more of that, the ending, the part that nobody really enjoyed at all.
Now, see, I would debate that simply because you're saying as like, oh, they just landed on Earth, they decided to get off the ship, and that's it. We can go generations beyond because we've seen that the robots can certainly last longer than the humans can. We can see an evolution, a change in humanity. We can see whether or not they've actually learned from their past. We can see whether or not they find a way of using innovation, which has always been an issue with Disney and technology. We can see whether or not they use it to help themselves or to hurt themselves, whether they're putting the robots back into slavery at one point because they've decided to fall back on their lethargy, or whether they've actually learned to make the planet a better place. And just even from the character standpoint, if you go ahead and you go to Inside Out, you're going to be dealing with the same 5 emotions that you got originally, because we've seen already in the movie, regardless of age or gender or even species, it's the same 5 emotions that are controlling everything in everyone's mind. We saw that at the end of the movie. With WALL-E, you can have upgrades to the robots, you can have different humans that they're interacting with, you can have even, and this is where I go on with the other part of the story, because it's more than just humanity and the commentary on that. It's a love story. It's the love between WALL-E and Eve, these two, this backwater high-end robot that just go ahead and meet and fall in love despite their differences. Don't tell me that Disney would not go ahead and try to profit off of making new toys based off of these revamped characters. Plus, and I dare say, give this idea, if there is going to be any kind of innovation, make an innovation between Eve and WALL-E. Combine the two, give them like a pseudo child, a daughter, call it Min-E, all right? Do something like that. That is what's down Disney's pike. If you're going Inside Out, you're basically just rehashing the same things that we've already seen in other movies. Because what? She's going to go into puberty? We've already seen that in most other coming-of-age type of stories. And let's face it, Disney has not exactly been prime with hitting those harder, more nuanced topics in regards to puberty and growing up in that kind of development. We've seen better development in Big Mouth.
Okay, you've spoken too long now. All right, look, they've already had Minnie. They already have Minnie, and she's living with Mickey because they love each other. You don't need a second Minnie in Disney. And they have been able to touch people's hearts and to go into these harder issues. Now, just because you make a robot good and you make a robot better doesn't make anything better about a movie. Just look at Pacific Rim Uprising. Just because upgraded robots didn't make that movie better than the first Pacific Rim. The heart and soul of WALL-E is the beginning when there's no dialogue and it's just WALL-E driving around. Now, you
so
say
you're basically saying the whole rest of the movie was trash?
I'm not saying the rest of the movie is trash. I'm saying that the things that people remember and people love about that movie is the first 75% of the movie, and in the end, That's what people forget. Now, with Inside Out, you say that you can't have more than emotions. Of course you can. Those can be the driving five
1 minute.
emotions that are rolling through everything, but there's so many different emotions you can bring into it. And puberty is an intense time in everybody's lives. You're talking about a teenage girl going into middle school, dating, learning these things, driving a car for the first time. There's so many different ways that you can go with Inside Out. WALL-E, it would just be a rehash, just in a reverse order. You would be doing the same thing that you're accusing Inside Out of, but you're just going back to the earth and trying to repopulate it and do things that way. Inside Out's going to have so much more depth, so many more directions you can go, so many more little things that you can see, and more things you can do with all the different emotions and bring in new emotions. Yes, you can have your core five running the ship, but you can bring in some smaller emotions in the background and introduce new characters, and that's where Disney
But
will
that's how
cash
you got
in.
the smaller emotions to begin with. The smaller emotions were based off of the five core emotions working together. All right, so you're still going to be working with the same crew of stuff. It's going to be the same mentality, with the exception of maybe something altering things in the puberty aspect. The only thing people remember about Inside Out was Bing Bong.
Time's up.
All right, that's
Time is up. Time is up, gentlemen. I'm sorry. The 5 minutes of debate is up. All right, we heard you the first time, Alarm. Jeez. Anyway, so that is the 5 minutes. That time is up. However, you guys are going to have 60 seconds to make your closing arguments. We'll go over to James first. James, you're going to have up to 60 seconds to make that closing argument, and that time will begin whenever you start talking.
The five emotions that drive Riley will not change, obviously, because we've seen the other ones, but you can bring in other emotions. And not only that, but more of the background emotions are going to be able to take over. You're going to have disgust and anger and fear leading the way more than you had with sadness and joy when she was a younger child, because those things are what impact a teenager. Seeing her go through her formative years and what she can do, going to her first school dance, and all these things. There's so many ways that you can build on this story. Riley is such an interesting character, and that world is so more interesting than you're making it seem. With WALL-E, you're just going to be going back to Earth with two robots and trying to get the heart that you got in the first movie that you're not going to be able to really get. It's already been done. You're just going to try to do it in a reverse order. The interesting part is WALL-E and Eve by themselves and not the humans. If you have humans coming back to the Earth, that's going to be uninteresting. It's not what people loved about WALL-E.
Time is up. Time is up. That will do it for that. Thank you very much, James. Appreciate that. And now we're going to go over to Ryan. You're going to have up to 60 seconds to make your closing arguments, and time will begin whenever you begin talking.
All right. You make the argument that disgust, fear, and anger would go ahead and probably take the charge, as opposed to joy and sadness. But the thing is, we saw that in the first movie already. We saw what happened when fear and disgust and anger took over while joy and sadness were away. Basically, all the stuff that you're talking about that we could see in her development, we already have seen. And we've seen things about young people's development over and over in other movies, whether it be Toy Story even with Andy growing up, or in other just young adults films. With WALL-E, there is so much more you can say about just working in harmony. It would be like Zootopia, but with robots, all right? There's other things that you can say about humanity, about the robots, about individuality, about identity, about working for the common good, just working to make things better when other people may be trying to backtrack you, which is stuff we didn't even get to discuss more so in the film originally. There you go.
All right, and then I'll do it for your closing arguments. All right, both competitors have made their closing statements. My goodness, this was a heck of a question. This was a heck of a debate. I am actually going to go over to my other judges on this one. I'm going to start off with Joe. Joe, what did you think about these arguments made by these competitors, and who do you think gets the point?
Two solid arguments, a lot of back and forth, a lot of good on what we would get from each movie. However, Ryan won me in his closing argument with saying that we already saw what it would be like with the other three emotions taking the charge in the first movie, and that there were more depth and plot ways, and that WALL-E has a lot more to say about with identity and harmony and working for the betterment of all. So I'm going to have to give my point to Ryan for this round.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. I'm actually going to go over to Richard. Richard, what do you have to say about these arguments from these two competitors, and who, in your mind, gets the point on this one?
Uh, both did really well. I mean, it was really tough because though I think they both did really well, just none of them really pointed out why their movie deserves a sequel. They talked about what could happen in the sequel. They never said why. But I am also going to give my point to Ryan because his attack, just like saying that the basic five emotions you're seeing, I mean, James tried to defend it, but he didn't defend it, I thought, well enough. Whereas I got a better picture of what Ryan's Wally sequel would be than Inside Out sequel would be. So my point's also going to Ryan.
All right, and with that, Ryan is gonna get the points or get the point here on the first question. Moving on to question number 2, and that question is thus: if you could remake any comedy but change its genre, what movie would it be, and what genre would you specifically want to change it to? Now, since we started with James in the first round, we are going to go over to Ryan to start things off. Ryan, you're going to have up to 90 seconds to make your opening statement, and that time will begin when you start talking.
Being someone that's grown up on comedy films, whether it be from HBO in my childhood to go into my first few movies to even now, the kind of movies I try to even go for when I'm going to the theater. Comedy has always struck me. One of the big comedy people that have helped influence my taste has been Jim Carrey. And so, in my mind, I would love to go ahead and doctor up one of his classic comedies. This one being one that was pretty much right for a whole different approach to from the get-go, The Mask. Basically, we've seen it being more of a love story slash cartoony sort of look, but really, if you look at the subject material and if you look at what the possibilities are with that kind of character, you could easily go horror, slasher, really just go dark and gritty, more so the kind of ultra violence that you would have gotten from the original comics based in the 90s. There's so much more that you can go off of with just the special effects alone, let alone if you actually take it by the storyline. If you follow the real star of the comics, not Stanley Ipkiss, you get a much more broad, much longer, much more in-depth story than you possibly could have ever realized by just making a silly, funny, cartoony sort of comedy.
All righty. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And now we're going to go over to James for his opening statement. James, you're going to have up to 90 seconds, as we stated before, and the time will begin whenever you start talking.
So yeah, Ryan went ahead and gave me, my opening statement too. So just everything he just said for the first 3 sentences, same thing applies to me, because I believe that Jim Carrey is a perfect choice to do something different, but not The Mask. The Mask was a great movie. The Mask was a fun movie. You know what wasn't a great movie? What wasn't a fun movie? The Cable Guy. The Cable Guy is what could have been. So much of that movie is what could have been, but what wasn't. The things that work well in The Cable Guy are how Jim Carrey is just so creepy and so just kind of menacing, but in a funny way. And if they would have switched that completely to menacing and completely to creepy and done it as this stalker that's just kind of going after Matthew Broderick and doing all these crazy things, but take the comedy out of it, it would have been a much more impactful movie and something that would have resonated a lot more with audience than what The Cable Guy did at the time. So you turn The Cable Guy into a psychological thriller of a stalker going after Matthew Broderick and popping up in all of these places, and you take all the little comedy beats out of it. Jim Carrey has proven over the years he's a fantastic actor when he wants to be. Things like Eternal Sunshine, and even creepy in his own way in that really shitty number 23 movie or whatever it was. But he's got the ability in him to do things like that. You don't change a movie that's fantastic like The Mask. You make something better.
Time is up. Time is up for your opening statement. All right. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. Now we are going to move into the heart of this round, of this question, I should say, and that is you guys are going to have up to 5 minutes of straight up debate, and we are going to find out who wins this round because of that, as well as the closing arguments. Time will begin whenever someone starts talking. Remember, it is 5 minutes.
So right off the bat, first I want to say to James, I appreciate you for also being a fellow Jim Carrey fan. Much love and heart to you. I give you that. The problem I have with your choice is that you're talking about making him more menacing and more psychological of a villain, but really, that in a sense is what you already got with Cable Guy. You're not really changing the genre of the film. You're basically just taking out the humorous aspects of it. And its heart, even if it is a satire of thrillers, it still is a thriller. You still have this over obsessive person stalking his preferred customer and leading himself and trying to bleed himself into the other guy's life. You're not really changing much. With The Mask, if you look at what they were originally conceiving for the film before they decided to make it a comedy, it was going to go grittier, it was going to go darker, it was going to go more violent. And we've seen with comic book movies like Deadpool and Logan, you can do an R-rated comic book movie and it can work.
You can call the mask. You can call the mask psychological, and that it's not a comedy. I mean, the Cable Guy didn't say that it's not a comedy, but it is a comedy. If you look anything up, it's labeled a comedy. It is a comedic movie that they just didn't know what to do with. They had all of this potential of being psychological, and they just kind of wasted it by throwing in these wasted jokes. The Mask, yes, the source material is dark, but it also does have funny moments in that source material too. So they just kind of took some of that and they ran with it and they went over the top with it. But it's not a bad movie at all. The Mask is one of Jim Carrey's best. It's from the height of his renaissance. So yes, you could make something different with it, but it's not saying that it's completely different. You're saying that the Cable Guy is already psychological. It's already not a comedy, but it is a comedy. It's very much a comedy, and that's the part
I never said
that
that it wasn't
doesn't
a
work
comedy.
with the
I
Cable
never said that. I already said that you wanted to make it a psychological thriller. It already is a psychological thriller that leans heavily on the comedic aspect.
No, it's
They've
not.
said
It's a comedy that leans on
it's been said
psychological.
itself that Carrey, Judd Apatow, and Ben Stiller, the men that worked on this film, wanted to make it a satire of thrillers. That was their idea to begin with. Originally, it was going to be more of a What About Bob sort of movie that was going to star Chris Farley, which I really would have loved. But
That would have been
we
a much
never
better
got
movie.
to it.
It would have been a much better
But
movie.
it would have been
That
more of
was
a
the
comedy.
case,
It would
but
have been more friendly. This was not as friendly a comedy. Cable Guy was a dark comedy. They say it's a dark comedy, and it's because it has all the thriller aspects in there. To give a point, Carrey himself actually won Best Villain at the MTV Movie Awards of '97 of that year. So if you're telling me that this was just a straight comedy, but you've got the lead character being hailed as a villain, then I'd like to think that there is something to be said about the thriller aspects that are already present in the film.
there can be a villain in any movie. You can pick comedies out and have a villain in it. It's not a big deal. And I'm not going to cite the MTV Movie Awards for any points because the MTV Movie Awards are a bunch of bullshit. So go ahead with that point.
Yeah, something to work with.
Look, it's a completely different movie than what they did make. They made that movie as a comedy with psychological aspects. What you needed was a psychological movie, and you needed something that was creepy and disturbing. And Jim Carrey had moments of that. He had moments of that. Ben Stiller was able to get moments of that in there, yes, because that's what he wanted, but it didn't make it into the final performance. It turned out to be a comedy. They marketed it as a comedy, and it failed because it was a comedy.
That's the thing. To take out the comedy is simply just going to leave it as it was originally slated as. All right, you're taking out the comedy. You're not changing the genre. You're just taking out half of the genre that's in there. I'm talking about
the comedy
180 in the Mac. I'm talking about comedy that's going to go ahead, still have some funny aspects to it, because basically when you wear the mask, you become a psychopath. You lose all inhibition. You lose your sanity. Putting that on a character, you could easily go ahead and have them twist themselves up. If you actually look at the source material, and I know I may be berating that, but if you look at it, the Stanley Ipkiss gets killed because they find out he's the mask. He's a cop murderer in the comics. You can easily correlate all that and just add it all onto the Detective Kellerman and his own moral issues with wanting to use the mask and not use the mask, whether it changes your mentality, it changes your morality, whether you're...
And that's perfectly fine. Look,
that is perfect for something like that. You could easily do a perfect 180.
Hey, look, I'm saying that your movie already... It could work with some of these elements, but it already worked as a comedy. I'm saying my movie did not work as a comedy. It did not work as a psychological satire. What you needed to do is take out the comedy, up the psychological, up the thriller, and make this movie good. It's not a good movie as is. It could be a good movie. You've already got a good movie in the mask. Changing it might not make it better. It might make it different. It might make it worse.
Time is up, gentlemen. Time is up for the 5 minutes of debate. we are going to go into closing arguments. Ryan, you're going to have up to 60 seconds to make your opening argument, and the time will begin whenever you start talking.
Again, as much as I love both movies, the question was, which one would you go ahead and take and change the genre? By taking something that was a romantic comedy, like The Mask, with whatever supernatural elements it may have had, and you change it into something that could be violent, blood-soaked. Think about the creativity you can have with the murders. If someone with that kind of power is able to go ahead and enact their darkest desires and their vengeance dreams on the ensuing public. Whether you use it for good or you use it for bad, you may not be able to use it at all because it may be using you. All right, it's like having the powers of Nightmare on Elm Street and the real world and using the blood and gore of Saw to enact your revenge on people. It's something that could be visceral, it could be dark, it could still have some fun, it can still be jokey, but it would definitely take a turn for the darker. And it just fits the comic character as a whole, and I'd like to see some truth done to it.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Appreciate that. We're going to go over to James. James, you're going to have 60 seconds to make your closing argument, and the time will begin whenever you start talking.
Yes, which comedy would I change the genre to, and why would I want to change a genre to make the film better? The only way that you can make The Cable Guy a better movie is to remove the farcical comedy in it, go full-on psychological thriller with this thing, make it intense, make it brooding, make it just Jim Carrey just at the height of his powers in that time frame. Make him mean and menacing and scary. Right now, with The Mask, you've already got a very good movie. It's one of Jim Carrey's best movies. It's a beloved movie. There's no reason to try to change that genre. It's already a fantastic movie as it is. Yes, you might make a good movie, but you're not going to be guaranteed to make a movie that's as good, if not better than The Mask. I guarantee if you take out the comedy that they did in The Cable Guy and you up the scare factor, you up the tension and the terror that's involved in that with this psychopath that's just stalking Matthew Broderick, you're going to make a better film than what was released and a much more beloved film than what was released.
All right, we have heard the closing arguments from both competitors. It was a heck of a question, and whew, man, it got a little hot under the collar. But anywho, we're going to go to our judges panel, find out who's going to get the points on this one. I'm going to go over to Richard. Richard, who in your mind is going to get the point, and what did you think of the arguments made by both competitors on this particular question?
So far, this for me is the toughest out of the two questions we've had so far. Both made very convincing arguments. My point is going with James because of the fact that James pointed out that though both wanted to, change, both their genres would make the films better, but the fact that Ryan's film was already considered a great movie and James' film was not considered that great is why would you... I see the changes for changing The Cable Guy to a thriller more beneficial than The Mask being a horror/thriller. So my point's going to James. James.
Ready?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to go over to me here on this one. Wow, this was a really tough question, and both competitors gave really good arguments. But for me, I'm actually going to be on the flip side of this one. I think Ryan brought up some good points on this about taking the film of The Mask a little bit further, a little bit darker, that kind of stuff, and that would have been interesting to see, even though there were may have been a little bit of hints of that within the already finished product. But with some of the arguments that he made, I'm going to give my point over to Ryan. So Joe, you got to break the tie here, man. Who gave the better argument, and who's going to get the point in question number 2?
So once again, great arguments on both sides. I think what really sold it to me was James's argument of by turning his film into a thriller, it would make it better than it was. Ryan was able to shoot back on that of it was a thriller, it was a satire of a thriller, but then James also shot back, but the satirical nature is what made it not work. And by making it just a straight thriller, it would work better, and The Mask was already good. So for that reason, I am going to give my point to James.
All right. And now we are, I believe we are tied up at 1 point apiece. Ryan's got one. Hey, James has got one too. Guess what that means, folks? We're going to go into question number 3. And question number 3 is as follows. If you could erase, not draw, but erase any remake from existence, what would it be? Whew! Dolly, there's a lot of directions that this question can go. There's only one way to find out, and that is with the opening arguments to start things off. So, went to James. All right, we're going to flip back over to James. James, you're going to go first. You're going to have up to 90 seconds. 90 seconds to make that opening argument, and the time is going to start whenever you start talking. The floor is yours.
Look, Hollywood remakes everything nowadays. They remake something that came out 2 years ago. They'll make something that came out 50 years ago. And one of the most egregious remakes of all time was Psycho. Psycho, remade with Anne Hesh and Gus Van Sant directing, doing a shot-for-shot remake, nearly a shot-for-shot remake of Alfred Hitchcock's beloved classic. It tread on the face of greatness. This is a beloved movie. Psycho is one of the most iconic films of all time. There was no reason to remake this movie, and if it was to be remade, there's no reason to make it exactly the same as what it was. If they would have remade this movie and changed some things, done things a little differently, not made it exactly the same thing, you could have gone in a different direction. You could have made something that wasn't predictable, but they didn't. They went with the exact same shots, the exact same premise, the exact same plot, the exact same scenes. So there's no buildup, there's no pressure, there's no tension. You know exactly what's going to happen. They did it with a worse director, they did it with a worse cast, and there was no reason to make this movie. It was a hubris of Gus Van Sant trying to do some sort of experimentation to see if it was possible. There was no reason to do it other than that. It was a waste of time. It was a waste of money. It was a waste of people's attention.
Alrighty. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We are going to go over to Ryan. Ryan, you're going to have up to 90 seconds to make your opening statement, and that time is going to begin whenever you start talking. So the floor is yours.
Again, not to necessarily piggyback on James's point, but yes, Hollywood does seem to have a bit of an itch when it comes to having to do remakes, whether it be of classic films, not classic films, good films, bad films, whatever. Although in some cases, some remakes always do try to do something different, always try to expand or see things in a different light. But when you go ahead and you make a remake and it is universally vilified in comparison to even its predecessors, which were fine, not great, not beloved, but certainly just fine, and you still go worse than that, you still can't even go up, that becomes a really big problem. And the perfect film that emphasizes that kind of mentality of going from mediocre to worse is 2015's Fantastic Four, or Fan Four Stick, however you want to do the writing of it. This was a movie that was simply made in order to make sure that Fox kept the rights to the brand, which is a moot point because they ended up losing it to Disney anyways. But this was a film that, for all intent and purposes, did not need to be made, should not have been made, and have done irreparable damage to the people that were involved in this film that we haven't seen much of note for them from years. At least, if nothing else, the first Fantastic Four films were fun, cute, lovely, in the same vein as the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. This movie was just dark, dreary, and depressing. It wasn't even a full movie.
Time's up. Time is up. Thank you so much. All right, gentlemen. Wow. Whoo, boy, you want to talk about hot topics, hot debates. This is going to be a barn burner, folks. Now, you guys are going to have up to 5 minutes of straight-up debate, and I will give you a 1-minute warning when that time comes up. But in the meantime, that 5 minutes of debating between you two will start whenever someone begins talking.
Ryan, how dare you, sir? How dare you put the Fantastic Four and the Rise of the Silver Surfer even in the same sentence as a Sam Raimi Spider-Man? Sam Raimi Spider-Man shit all over those movies. Those movies were garbage fires to begin with. There was nothing good about those movies. They were not good movies. Now, there was a reason to make this.
Never said they were good movies. I said they were mediocre and they were fun at best.
You said they were in the same vein as Sam Raimi Spider-Man, which are good movies, at least two
right, which were more cartoony and more vibrant in their appearance, as opposed to the dark and dreary that you got with the Fan Four Stick.
Get out of here. So the thing is, you already gave a reason why Fan Four Stick had to be made. You gave 2 reasons. For one, that the previous movies were not good. So what about let's make another one and see if we can improve on the shit storm that we made earlier. Let's try to make better movies. They got a great cast involved. They got a pretty good story, but they just didn't execute it well.
And
now,
they failed completely. All right,
they didn't fail completely. There's some great visuals in the movie. There's some great performances in the movie.
Josh Trank had an idea for the movie, and that got completely side-roaded by the same people that decided, oh, let's make a movie to keep the rights in the first place. And it was because of the interaction between Trank and Fox that went ahead and blew this thing up into the dog pile that it was. At least for Gus Van Sant.
So that was the second reason. That's the second reason. That's the second reason that you gave, that they also needed to make it to keep the rights. So there was two good reasons why this movie had to be made for you. There's no reason. There's really no reason for Psycho. There's no reason. Okay, there's no reason for Psycho to be made other than Gus Van Sant just trying to make a film school project and decide to put it out on the big screen with Vince Vaughn and Anne Heche. There was no reason to make that movie.
But there you go. The lesson has been learned. It was an experiment. It was something that Gus Van Sant felt strongly about wanting to attempt. The fact that he went ahead and copied Hitchcock to such a degree shows his admiration for the film and wanted to see if such a thing could be done in general, let alone by himself. There's a reason you haven't seen shot-for-shot remakes, and that's because people have probably learned from all the way back in 98 that you shouldn't do something like this. Whereas here in 2015, in a golden age of where we've had comic book movies, how they were able to flub Fan Four Stick is beyond me. And mind you, Psycho hasn't had as much stink on it as Fantastic Four has. Psycho, if nothing else, the remake, none of the cast really suffered from the movie. Viggo Mortensen, Julianne Moore, Vince Vaughn, they've all had great careers ever since that.
And do you know why that is? Because that was before social media. If we had Psycho that came out, if we had Psycho that came out in 2015, like your movie did, they would have been destroying Psycho. But no, this movie came out 17 years earlier, so you don't have that backlash. Now, no, look, the reason that Psycho, or your point that you don't see shot-for-shot remakes, you do see shot-for-shot remakes all the time. You see them on YouTube. People make shot-for-shot remakes all the time. The Indiana Jones one is fantastic. Everybody loves it. No, it's not the fact that it shouldn't.
You see it on YouTube. You're not seeing it being done by a big production company that should.
But you know what? You know what? That's a better film than the Psycho one was. Look, Psycho is such a
neither of us arguing that either of these films are good. We're not arguing that either of these remakes are good. We both admit they suck.
But for the 1998 Psycho, the 1998 Psycho had no original take. It had zero originality to it. All it was just doing exactly the same thing, and it had worse actors. It had worse direction. When you try to live up to Hitchcock,
did you see the lineup of the actors that they had?
Vince Vaughn is not Anthony Perkins, not even close. Anthony Perkins in that role is one of the
back in the day when he was doing like player swingers and Maid and everything. He had more of a creepy aesthetic. 90s Vince Vaughn can't be compared to 2000s Vince Vaughn.
I'm not comparing it to 2000s Vince Vaughn, but I'm saying that in that movie he did not have that.
1 minute.
It was not. It was not a fine choice. What they should have done, even if they were going to go with that same cast, is switch Vince Vaughn and Viggo Mortensen. Viggo Mortensen would have been a much better.
People said they loved Viggo Mortensen. They said it was probably better than the original. That was probably the only one that was better than the original, but they said Viggo was better than the originals. So, I mean, to say that, yes, it was an experiment, but it was an experiment that didn't need to be done. And even then, you can still probably go back and look at the original Psycho, whereas Fantastic Four, whether it be this film or the 2005 film or the 2007 film, none of it has been good. None of it has been great. None of it has been to the point where it's like, oh, we need to. The only reason they kept on doing it was because it made money. And mind you, the first two made money. The third one made almost no money. It barely even broke even. It basically lost $100 million to the Fox company, whereas the other ones made money. So when you have a movie that made money and you have a movie that did make money, which one do you think should have been made? Where at least with Psycho, it was an art house film.
Time is up, gentlemen. Time is up on the debate portion of this question, Mike. Goodness gracious. All right, now we're going to move into our closing arguments. James, you're going to have up to 60 seconds to make your closing argument, and that time will begin whenever you start talking. Once again, the floor is yours.
Look, Ryan, you even said it's an experiment that shouldn't have been made. Yes, Psycho is an experiment that shouldn't have been made. And you said that the third movie of the Fantastic Four failed and that these movies made money. Right, and that's why they needed to make another one. They needed to attempt to make a good Fantastic Four movie. It's been proven twice that you can make a good Fantastic Four movie. It just happens to be called The Incredibles 1 and The Incredibles 2. So there is body there to do them. but they just failed on the execution. They had a good cast. Miles Teller's a fantastic actor. Michael B. Jordan, it's a great cast. They just did not get the execution right. Now, Psycho, you're talking about a movie, like I said, like you said, it shouldn't have been made. We both agreed it shouldn't have been made. So, I mean, you basically just proved the point to this question. They should not have done it. But they don't attempt to be a different film. If they would have tried something different, if they would have gone in a different direction, it could have been different. Jimmy Stewart had a very long time ago quote saying that films are pieces of time. Psycho should have been left to 1960
Time
and
is
never
up.
tried again.
Time is up. Time is up on your closing argument. Thank you, James. Going to move over to Ryan. Ryan, you're going to have up to 60 seconds to wrap this thing up in a nice, pretty bow. And you have 60 seconds. Time will begin whenever you start talking. On this case, the floor is yours.
The main point that we've both discussed here is that, yes, both of our films suck. We get that. The thing is, Gus Van Sant knew exactly what he was doing when he made Psycho. He knew what he was doing. There was no confusion about it being a cut remake. So they gave him the money. They knew what they were doing. They went along with it. Fantastic Four was one movie that was planned by Josh Trank, who we haven't even seen anything since because of it, because this was so detrimental to the man. That was foiled and miscued by the Fox company, and we didn't get the film that we were originally supposed to be seeing. It lost the company money. It did irreparable damage to most of the cast, save for Michael B. Jordan. And for poor Trank, in his budding directing career, we haven't seen since. This is a movie that has done more damage to the franchise than Psycho did to the original. This is a movie that, for all its greedy purposes, should not have been made, should have been left alone, and the rights should have gone back over to Disney in the first place.
Time is up. Time is up. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Oh my goodness. Whew. This was a great question, great debates by both competitors. I'm going to go first on this one. This is actually a bit of a tough call for me because both of you guys brought up some really good points, whether it be about the actors being put in these roles or whether these films shouldn't have been made in the first place or why these films were made specifically for their different respective reasons. Just ever so slightly. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and give my point to James on this one for some of the points he made about Psycho and the director and the cast and some of the other things that were going on with that film. So my point's going to go to James on this one. Joe, what are you going to say on this? Who do you think gets the point in your mind based off the arguments made by these competitors?
So, based on the arguments, I didn't hear a lot for the question, which was, isn't the wording which one should be erased? I didn't hear a lot on either side on why it should be erased. That being said, I heard more on why it was a bad film and shouldn't have been made in the first place from James. So I'm going to give James the point on how he said on how it was just shouldn't have been made. It was a failed experiment, and there were reasons to make Fantastic Four, and there just wasn't any reasons to even make the Psycho remake in the first place. So I'm giving my point to James.
With that being said, if my math is right, I think that it is, James is up 2-1. So Ryan, you're gonna have a bit of ground to make up. But guess what? We have a special gift for you, and it's called the Speed Round. So how the Speed Round is gonna work? We got some questions here. The first question, both of you guys are going to have up to 30 seconds to make your opening statements and then 15 second rebuttals, and we'll go from there. Now, remember, these are speed round questions. You were not given these ahead of time. You're going to have to think quick on your feet. So whoever the first competitor to respond first will get the opportunity to present their argument first, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense to the competitors?
Yeah.
Just making sure. All right. Awesome, tacular. All right. Question number 1 within the speed round. Oh boy, we've heard some things about this, but we'll see what happens. All right, the question is, please listen carefully. I'm going to read this off as it is worded. Best non-comic book movie performance that Hugh Jackman is given.
Logan.
All right.
Oh,
wait, no. We said non-comic book.
Non-comic book, yeah.
And guys, remember, you say your name first, and that gives you the choice to choose.
Sorry, Ryan.
I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, Ryan, did you have something? I'm sorry.
I said Greatest Showman.
Les Mis.
Oh, wow. All right. Going the musical route. Thank you. 30 seconds to make an opening statement. 30 seconds for Ryan. Your time will begin whenever you start talking. 30 seconds whenever you start.
The Greatest Showman, despite all the thoughts that came along with the history of the story, is a musical spectacle that should not have ended up as big as it was. But Lord knows, between the presence of Hugh Jackman at the forefront of the film and all the accompanying music, really shows off his acting chops, his Broadway capabilities and sensibility towards music, and his overall performance and his showmanship. It in itself shows that he is the greatest showman that we have right now.
All right, time is up. Time is up. Thank you very much. And James, you're going to have 30 seconds to make your opening statement, and time will begin whenever you start talking.
The Greatest Showman is everything that he is in Les Mis, but worse. What he does in Les Mis is he sings, but he also acts. In The Greatest Showman, he is given so little to act with. All he is performing a soundtrack. His soundtrack is so good, but when you have the performance of him as Jean Valjean in Les Mis, the amount of heart, the amount of depth of soul that you need in that performance is so much more than get anything in Greatest Showman. Greatest Showman is nothing but a soundtrack with visuals around it. Les Mis is a much better soundtrack with better acting, better a performance and everything else along with
Time is up. Time is up. Time is up. Alrighty. With that being said, you guys are going to have 15 seconds to make a rebuttal. We'll go over to Ryan first. Ryan, in this case, you're going to have 15 seconds. Make it good, and time will begin whenever you start talking.
Les Mis had a better soundtrack because Andrew Lloyd Webber had a better musical. All right, you're basing everything off of the musical being transplanted over into film. Besides, more people talked about Anne Hathaway's performance in Les Mis more so than they talked about Hugh Jackman. But Hugh Jackman being the lead of The Greatest Showman really makes him the standout, regardless of where the music came from.
Time is up. Time is up. Time is up on that. And James, you're going to have 15 seconds to make your rebuttal, and that 15 seconds will officially begin whenever you start talking. So the floor is yours.
Not only is it better music in Les Mis, it's a better performance in Les Mis. That's what I'm backing my my pick on. It's not that it's just good music. He actually has more to work with. He has more emotion. He has more depth of character. The Greatest Showman is nothing but a soundtrack. It's just songs with dancing around it. It's not a performance.
Time is up. Time is up. That is the end of the time. Oh my goodness gracious. Speed rounds, boy, they go by so quickly, don't they? I know. Bad jokes. I got to get better material, folks. What are you going to do? Anywho, Richard, who's getting the point on this one, man?
First of all, just gotta appreciate both these guys' choices as someone who got his degree in theater. So I love both these movies. My point's going to James. James just had the better argument of why. Just saying that Hugh Jackman's performance, just like it was a better movie, better performance, whereas Ryan didn't really defend James' attack on the fact that it was just Greatest Showman was just basically soundtrack. Ryan didn't give any description why, what performance, what. James gets my point. That's what I'm trying to say. Word.
It's okay.
You
man.
get what I'm trying to say.
No, I get what I get what you're trying to say. Excuse me. I get what you are trying to say. Gotcha. Joe, who's gonna get the point, man?
I'm going to also have to give the point to James. Well, Ryan did a good job of bringing up why Hugh Jackman brought people into The Greatest Showman. He didn't say a lot about the performance, and the question was about the performance, not the movie overall. So, and then James bringing in the depth and also attacking how Greatest Showman was nothing more than a soundtrack that he was slapped on, but he actually had a real performance in Les Mis. So with that being said, James gets my point.
And your winner is James the Gator White in this matchup. Congratulations to James. Congratulations to Ryan. You put up a great effort, really good arguments, really good questions. Everyone presented their arguments very, very well, so great job to all of you. And my goodness, what a great matchup that was. Before we go into post-game interviews with these two competitors, quickly go over to my judges panel. Richard, what did you think of this match overall, and what did you think of the competitors tonight?
Both awesome. It was a great match. Both fought it out. Definitely, I love there's a couple times where both competitors were getting heated with each other, and I love that, the fierceness of wanting to win. So it was a good match.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Joe, what did you think of this matchup tonight, my man?
We had two absolute titans just clashing at each other, going blow for blow, pound for pound, and it was an amazing match to watch. And I can't wait to see what these two guys continue to do in the league.
Absolutely, absolutely. I thought these were great. I thought these were really good questions, and both competitors put their best foot forward. Both competitors brought up some good points, some good counterpoints, and all that good stuff mixed together. That's what makes movie Battleground so special. We're going to go to the post-match interviews with our competitors, find out how they're feeling right now. James, you are the victor tonight. You won this thing. What are your thoughts on your overall performance in this matchup, and just what are you looking forward to next within movie Battleground?
Oh man, thank you. Dude, this was just a blast. To be honest with you, I thought I was most confident on the first question. I thought that of all the questions, I was like, I can get this inside out. I'm a huge Pixar guy, so to lose that one, it put me in a real deep hole that I had to kind of dig myself out of. But of all the matches that I've done in this, Ryan, man, he was coming at me with body blows the entire match. This was the most fun I've had in any of my 3 matches, because I really didn't know where the judging was going to go. Just listening to it back and forth, I knew my points, I knew his points, and I could see either one of us winning any one of those 3, and it was just really, really nerve-wracking coming down to you guys picking a point. So this was a lot of fun. I really don't envy who has to take on Ryan next, because he's going to be out for blood and he's going to destroy somebody. But I had a lot of fun, and I can't wait for my next match.
Absolutely, absolutely. You actually move up to 3-0 in this division of here in Movie Battleground. My gosh, 3-0. That's a pretty good record right there. Is there anybody you're looking forward to competing against next? Is there anyone you're looking at? Anybody you want to call out, or are you just going to let the chips fall where they may?
You know what? I'm not looking ahead. I just kind of take every match as they come. So, whatever falls on my lap, we'll go from there and see what happens. I'm not going to call anybody out. So we'll see what happens next.
Alrighty, you know what? I have just heard from the commissioner's office. The powers that be have just messaged me stating that you're officially going to take on someone we know very well. He's moved up from here to there. He works for corruption. He's in the movie Trivia Schmodown. That would be the Cobra himself. Chance freaking Ellison is, in the words of Goldberg, he's next. So how do you feel about going up against the Cobra, known as Chance Ellison?
I mean, he has 0 charisma, so I mean, I have no qualms about beating him in a Battleground match.
No. All right. I like it. I like the confidence. That's awesome. Look forward to seeing that match between you and the Cobra. My gosh, he's been spending so much time up there in the paradise, the island, the Icarus, whatever. But who knows? If he flies too close to the sun and he goes up against you, his wings may tip off and you may be the victor. Who knows? We'll find out.
Time to knock him down a peg or two.
Yeah, you may be able to knock him down a peg or two. We will find out in your next match. Now, we congratulate you, wish you the best of luck. Now I'm going to go over to our second place finisher tonight, the real or deal, Ryan O'Regan. Ryan, what were your thoughts on your overall performance in this matchup, and what are you looking forward to next within the Movie Battleground division?
My performance as a whole, I gave it every thought I could possibly give. So, I mean, the chips lay where they may. You can only do your best in these circumstances. If I have any regret, I regret maybe not using that extra minute that I don't think gets mentioned too often, but I do know it's there. And I probably could have used that for at least the mask one to really showcase that. But all things considered, I mean, again, I've only had 2 matches. I have to say this one was a little more furious than the first one, but I can't say too much about the first one because the judge is right over there in camera. So I don't want to denounce Joe in any way, shape, or form because he got me going, he got me started in this. But if nothing else, James has shown me the type of competitor that thrives in this. And I've learned a great deal just in debate with James. So for James, I thank you for that, for this, I guess you can say, an education. And I'm probably a little bitter. I'm not going to lie. As we know, I'm open and honest, even if it's to my detriment. And yes, the next person I go out for, I will probably not be as empathetic or sympathetic or even as like-minded as I was with James, because with me and James, I feel like we were on par with a lot of the arguments. You know, we would have said one thing or the other in the same respect. You know, it just would have been flipping the seats. But whoever I go up against next, whoever that may be, I will gut them like a trout.
We definitely look forward to seeing that. Is there anybody in particular within the movie Battleground division that you're looking forward to competing against? Maybe somebody you want to call out? Or are you just going to see what the powers that be have in store for your next match?
I let the chips lay as they may, as I say. So, and I didn't mean for that to rhyme. I really did not mean for that to rhyme.
That's okay.
But yeah, thank you. But if nothing else, yes, let them decide, because at this point, I don't think it really matters who I go up against, because whoever I go up against, I will study like I have to. I will do my research on my subjects. I will see their previous matches, and I will be out for the blood to gush over me and drench my face like so much Ric Flair in a match. All right. I need to, in order to add some vengeance and validity to my arguments. So let the universe decide.
All right, sounds like a plan. You're going to be more vicious, more so looking for blood, more so than those sharks that are going to be unleashed in 47 Meters Down Part 2, Uncaged, hitting theaters this August. And yes, I will be there opening weekend to see that movie. Don't worry, they are not a sponsor. Anyhow,
that is the weirdest plug I could have hoped for.
I couldn't help it. It's a shark movie. You're out for blood. Sharks can smell blah blah blah. Blah. Whatever. Sorry, I probably should have used a Jaws reference to honor Mark Riley, but he's not here right now. I'll take a message. Anywho, that is going to do it for us on this episode of Movie Battleground. But before we go, we're going to go around the table here. We're going to let everyone plug their upcoming projects, things they want to tell us about real quickly. We're going to go to our winner, James the Gator White. James, is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here? Where can people find you online?
You guys can find me all over socials, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, all that good stuff at Gator24. It's G4TOR24. I also have been writing reviews for my buddy Brandon Hanna and his blog, The Lords of Film Blog, so you can check out there. I did a review for The Favorite not long ago, and I need to write a new one soon, so I need to get on that. I guess do something.
That sounds like a plan. Thank you so much for joining us. Real or Deal, Ryan O'Regan. Where can the good people find you online?
Well, they can usually find me at Real or Deal on Instagram and Twitter, and that's REEL for anyone that might be confused. And of course, there's also the Real or Deal Entertainment Facebook page where I do most of my reviews, which I do have a massive 7-movie review coming out this weekend, pretty much encapsulating the end of May. We're talking John Wick 3, Booksmart, Brightburn, Aladdin, the Godzilla, the thing with the lizard. I wasn't gonna say Gator, but I didn't want to necessarily say that too. And possibly X-Men: Dark Phoenix once I see it this week.
All right, definitely look forward to seeing those videos and those upcoming reviews. Going over to the judges panel, Richard, where can the good people find you online, my man?
They can find me on Facebook under Richard Schwartz. They can find me on YouTube and Twitter under External Void, where I do WWE Champions Mobile Gaming. I just, play a game on my phone. I have about 1,200 subscribers. Woohoo! And you can also find me walking around LA because I got nothing better else to do.
Oh, jeez. I'm loving these plugs. Anywho, thank you so much for that, Richard. I appreciate it. Joe Harrison. Joe, where can the good people find you online?
You guys can find me at Joe Hipsterson on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you're in Scotland in the beginning of August, I will be performing in a world premiere play called 44 Days at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Wish you the best of luck on that. That is awesome. And I was your lead judge or host that did a 55% better job than I did last time. So the glass is half full or half empty. Take that with a grain of salt. No puns intended. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RyanRPM5. RyanRPM5, the number 5. You can find me on Facebook at Ryan Permerson Aspiring Movie Critic. That's RyanPermason. And yes, I recently saw a little film called just call it Dark Phoenix on the posters. I don't care, because you need to call it an X-Men movie to make sure that average-going moviegoers understand what they're getting into. So I've ranked all the X-Men movies, and you can find all my lists of all different kinds of stuff on Letterboxd. That's letterboxd.com/RyanMovieBuff. You find my list there, and believe me, there's more than one hot take on those lists, pal. Other than that, thank you all so much for joining us. If you liked this video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. You can find me all over the interwebs, competing in some of the other various fan movie trivia leagues here on the interwebs. Thank you for watching this episode of Movie Battleground, and we will see you all next time.